Hi everyone, I'm Kerry LaVelle. Um, I just like a little background. I started at KW literally from a recommendation from Laura Brockway. She said, there's a job available on weekends answering phones. At the time, I was divorced, and well, I mean, I still am, but but I was looking for some extra income on weekends to supplement my job because the job I was in was pulling me too many hours away from my kids, and it wasn't manageable. So I figured, weekends would be better. More people are around to watch the kids, whatever. So I started with that. And as I continued to learn more about KW, I realized, wow, this company, and this is not comparing to any other real estate companies, but I started to watch some of the information that was supplied by like Gary, the training videos, and I quickly realized, like, you know what, there's a lot more to this than just a company. It seemed to be very based on supporting people and a lot of the core values that I also have. So anyway, so I started doing that. I ended up getting licensed, and my first experience as a licensed agent was with rentals, and part of that was coincidence. It also, what I liked about it was I went from having a full-time salary to not having that. And the thing that was nice about rentals is it was a quicker payout. So it's just a faster pace versus, a closing of a house, whatever. So last year, I jumped in pretty hard. I did 37 rental transactions, and a lot of those were from leads. I was on a team, but the majority of them were actually, as I met these people at the rental properties, I took the time to ask them, listen, if you don't like this, what are you looking for? What, the same thing that they tell you in, when you're working with buyers, to try to kind of like pre-qualify. And, for renters, they are not used to hearing that. It's usually like they're finding everything on Zillow. So it's a very fast thing. Do you like this house? Do you not? No. Okay. It seemed to me that they were unaccustomed to having someone actually take an interest in, well, what are you looking for? And what, and so I was doing that because literally that was all I knew. And I knew I needed to have some more people in my pipeline. So, so yes, I did have some leads from, like I said, the team I was on, and they had some names, but after that, it was all about working those leads after. Another thing that, I've found out there are very varying opinions on the rental market. There are people that just cannot stand that at all. Like they don't want any part of it. What I liked about it was the fast pace. It was, it's very, you're getting texts all day long. Different people, you don't know who they are. They're looking for different things. I like the, the pace of that. And also I've always been a multitasker. So for me, I like that. And I think if you're going to be doing rentals, that should be something that you should consider. So right now, I think rentals are even being more pushed to the forefront because of what's happening with this whole pandemic. I've had a lot of calls from people that are looking to, get out of the cities. They don't want to share shared entrances. They don't want to share HVAC systems. People coming from Jersey City, Hoboken, they're breathing the same air as everyone else. And, I think it's lightened up a little bit with all of that, but that's still a consideration that has kind of changed. It was almost like 9/11. People had a mass exodus, and it might come back, but for now, that's definitely something they're considering. And so the rental market has changed in where they're looking. It used to be they would be happy to have, in an apartment complex. It didn't matter. Now I found it's been a little more, I've had to do a little more research on where exactly that property is. How is the access to it? Are they even sharing laundry? you know, it just depends. And that's where it really matters to make that relationship with that renter, to find out exactly what they need. Another thing that's been different. So I had showed a property in Westfield, and I was lucky enough to meet one of the top agents in Westfield who does a lot of high-end properties. He's got great contacts with some of his Manhattan clients, like, you know, really, really like top-notch people. And I was just picking his brain because I can, you know, obviously I'm new. I can always learn from anyone with more experience. But one thing he was saying, in all his years of doing this, he's never seen so many people requiring rentals with pools. And, you know, even from selling a home, pools are, you know, you either love them or you don't. And recently people are flocking to those homes with pools, even if they can do short-term rentals, because these people that are moving out of the cities want a place for their kids, because the public pools aren't open if they don't have a place to go to the shore. I mean, you think about yourself, if you have kids, how nice to have, you know, something in the background where they can be active and doing all that. Okay, so some of the advantages. Oh, and by the way, if you have any questions, please, I have an hour to fill and I'm probably gonna go through the list in like 20 minutes. But if you have questions, jump in. I'm happy to answer anything. So for me, advantages of working with rentals. You're paid at least signing. So like I said, when I went from a full-time salary to working on commission, it was important to me that I would have a quicker turnaround in pay. So, you know, when you do those rentals, everything is paid up front. Even if you secure someone for, say, like in August, they need to pay that at least signing. So at least you're getting some type of income, you know, right away. If you're able to come across a rental, the leads that come through are unbelievable. And some of them, of course, will not pan out. But if you're good about, for me, I love to keep a spreadsheet. I keep a spreadsheet of, you know, when they came in, their phone number, their email address. And, you know, even when I reply to them, if they didn't follow up with me, if I have some, you know, downtime later, I'll just say, hey, I noticed, you know, you're interested, you didn't follow up. How can I help you? You know, a big thing about this KW culture is about how you can help people. And I've always felt that in any type of job and my life, you know, Vanessa Pollock, her whole platform is based on that, you know, the care, serve, give. But it really, really is true. If you go from the point of how you're helping people, it's always going to come back to you. If not, just that you feel better about it. So, you know, my point is, if there is someone that comes across as interested, but they didn't respond, just find out what they need. It could lead to something later. You never know.
Well, you make a good point, Kerry. I don't mean to cut you off. But
thank
with
you,
renters,
Allison.
you know, I always have something to say. With renters, you're right. They usually don't get the attention and, you know, the time and effort of an agent. Agents, you know, most agents, they pass them off to somebody else because they don't want to deal with it. So, I mean, number one, I think that's just awesome tidbit. My question then, how do you find, are renters loyal? Because I think that's another thing that people are worried about. You know, is this renter going to be loyal? Are they going to find something on Zillow and like leave me in the dust and I just spent 6 hours?
So I'll jump down to my next section. Yeah, the biggest problem with renters is they're not loyal because they have everything at their fingertips. Right. What I found mostly, they don't understand that you can help them with everything else. A lot of renters come in thinking that they have to contact the listing agent on that property and that's it. If they don't get it, you know, and even on Zillow, there's, you know, for rent by owners, you know, not FSBOs, but FURBOs. I learned. But yeah, so if you show them, and this is what's converted a lot of them to me is, like I said before, you know, asking them, what do they need? They were shocked. Oh, you can help me with other things. They don't realize that. And so you really need to be the expert on that market and what's coming out. You know, people don't want to get hot sheets on rentals. Well, I do, because I want to see what's the newest that's out there. But you can't rely strictly on the MLS, because Zillow also has things. I've also come across, there are agents, who aren't in GSMLS. Maybe they're Hudson, Middlesex. And so it'll be out there, and it's, you don't see it on GSMLS because you have your own, system of getting the hot sheets. But there's a lot that they see, and you just want to be, you want to be the first to present it to them. But I also tell them, that's so great that you found this, and I'll be happy to see it. You don't want to sound like, oh, I didn't know. It's how you present it back to them. Like, that was great that you found that. Absolutely. And then, well, I guess I could skip a little bit, because I was gonna mention that the one thing. So I was looking for someone for a long time, and there wasn't anything that I found. And on Craigslist, there was a for rent by owner. So I just figured, let me just give him a call and see what happens. And, I always preface it with, are you working with buyer's agents? Mm-hmm. And he said, you know what, let me tell you a little story. And I said, okay. He said, I had one of you agents give me a call asking the same question. And he said, yep, I'm absolutely happy to work with them. And he understood, he's a pretty savvy investor. I think he does this a lot. But where he was burned was, he said, I am happy to, I understand you'll get your commission from the tenant. And what got me in trouble was that agent started to market his property as his own. So he had a bad taste in his mouth about that. So I had to convince him, listen, I will never market your property as my own. I understand it's yours, but I have more access to people looking. So let's, work this out. And it turned out he actually did say, you know what, I won't even advertise anymore that there's no fee, because then I don't have to put you in a bad place. So, there's a lot, it can be from, I'm now like transitioning into more, homes and stuff, but, my first year was completely all about rentals and working these people. It can be a full-time job. And there are other agents and other companies that, I come across a lot, and that's all they do is the rental. So it can be lucrative, but, anyway, did that answer your question? I kind of went off a little bit, but.
No, that was really great. I love it.
Kerry, it's Peter. Hi.
Hi, Peter.
I have a listing rental in Summit, and it's getting I'm getting a lot of requests from people from Zillow. Mm-hmm. And I'm calling everybody back. Mm-hmm. And a couple of people are asking me to search out places, but they're really not loyal. Maybe I'm going through a phase, but I'm doing work, and then I'm thinking you never hear from them again. So I do agree that you do get a lot of hits. Mm-hmm. When you do a rental. Mm-hmm. And you do make a lot of contacts, and I have contacts from, even though I have not rented them in the apartment. And it is a quick thing. Once they're in and they see it, they love it. It's a done deal. There's too much time wasted. But a lot of people have asked me for favors, but you don't hear from them again. So that's just, they're always looking. They're looking quickly for an apartment.
Yeah. And so the other thing is, so part of the thing with rentals is you have to, a lot of people, it's a different like relationship. So a lot of, and this was going to bring me into my next point of how important pre-qualifying is, because there are people, and I only learned this from experience. I didn't have any training on rentals. I just kind of jumped in. And what I found out was, one of the first things you need to figure out is, what's your credit score? And it's each, and this is where it kind of goes back to a class that Kara did last week. And it's about the, DISC and knowing that person. And it's really hard to say when you're first meeting them, figure out like what are their buttons that are going to push. But if you can somehow find out, there's a lot, the same way I didn't know what the rental process was. It's the same thing with a lot of these renters, and they don't understand, you know, the process. They're going to have to supply their credit score, proof of income. I've come across a lot of people that say, well, I have a cosigner, no worries. Well, depending on what the landlord is requesting, if they want the NTN and you put down a cosigner, they have to make almost 5 times the amount that a regular applicant would make. And they don't understand that. They think, oh, well, my mom will just cover it. And it's not the case. So you could end up wasting your time on people that aren't actually, you know, even going to qualify for the rental. And what I do in that case, when I find that out, you know, after I ask for, you know, proof of income, and, you know, their credit score, I then transfer them over to maybe saying, hey, have you talked to a lender? You know, Brian DeVito. I've had Brian talk to one of my renters, and now they're actually going to become a buyer because they were given misinformation about how to improve your credit score. And there's all these things out there that can say there's actually programs that are completely fraudulent because they say they're going to improve your credit score, and they don't. And so if you can refer them to someone like, you know, someone from our guaranteed rate team, they can help them with that. But once again, you want to come with offering some value. And that's where I find the loyalty really comes back to me. If you can just find out one piece of information that you're giving them that, you know, you can offer them that they don't know before, it helps with the loyalty. And be on top of, look at Zillow, look at that. Like, you have to be, you know, the master in that market.
Yeah, they have to have good credit. Don't even bother.
Well, yeah. So you need to have credit. You know, the other thing I you know, learned from experience is, you know, they'll say, yes, we have a pet, we need dog, you know, pet friendly. And then it turns out they have 2 pit bulls or something, which is fine. There are landlords that will not accept that. They just, it's, even if they're, you know, the most, like the sweetest pets, you know, they don't have it. And the problem is that, you know, in New Jersey law really protects the tenants over the landlords. So they do have to be very selective in who they choose to have. So you have to actually, like, deliver that message gently, you know, because that's the last thing that they want to hear, but it's something to consider.
So Kerry. Yeah.
Oh, hi.
You're doing great. I have a situation where someone's bad credit. It's interesting how it impacted them and me in the long run. They had lost a family business and lost their home. Came to New Jersey, rented a place where the landlord directly gave them a break, but then they needed to get another place. So I helped them, and, you know, would write the letter and explain to the listing agent what was going on. And of course they had a dog as well. And a landlord really felt for them and liked their story. So just like you do a cover letter for when you purchasing a house, did the same thing for them when they were renting. So they got in, the landlord chose them over another couple that did not have a dog and had offered more money for this house. So they've been renting, but they've given me like about $5 million worth of referral business over the past 3 years. Yeah. They're still working on their credit, but eventually they'll buy. But it's just, depending upon who the landlord is, sometimes you can just hear, everybody has a story. Everybody.
Oh my gosh. I mean, that type of follow-up, it actually happened today. So I had an agent, or last week, an agent that had called me, and he said, I need a rental and he was from South Jersey, KW. And I need, and you know, us up here will understand how funny this sounds, but he said, I need a minimum 2-bedroom for $1,500. It's like, if you find that, please let me know. But I said, okay, I just want to tell you that's going to be really tough, you know, but please send me the information. I'd love to talk to them and figure it out. So then he called me back yesterday, and he said, once again, I have this, this renter. I'm sorry I didn't get back to you, but they need, this is a little more of what they need. And, it's in the Elizabeth area. You're perfect for this. Can you please help me? And I said, I know, I'll try as much as I can. Can I just give me your information? I'd love to talk to her. So then he called me back and he said, you know what? Thank you so much, because I've talked to several agents and they said, absolutely not. It's out of the question. But I'd actually like to refer you. I have a listing coming on, and it's in New Brunswick, which I'm going to still have to figure out, like Middlesex, MLS. But it's almost 900,000, and would you be able to help me with that? And I was like, yes, I can. But once again, like, you never know. Like, don't ever. I mean, I know that I'm not trying to tell you guys what to do, but once again, you never know where it's coming from. And also, the other thing I wanted to mention was, in terms of the follow-up, when I have renters, so I keep these spreadsheets, and every time someone will call in, I keep a little spreadsheet, detailed spreadsheet about them. But I also note in my future calendar, so for 2021, when they were reaching out and when they were looking for. Because 3 months before that, I put a trigger on my calendar to reach back out to them and say, hey, I had spoken with you, a year ago. Are you happy where you found, even, and this is literally even if I haven't found them a place, but are you happy where, you found, to rent? Are you looking perhaps to buy now? What, how can I help you, or anything? And in that meantime, because I've added them to my database, they're also getting my little, market updates or anything. And right now I've got, so out of the past 4 closings with buyers that I had, 3 of them were actually renters that converted to buyers. So it pays off to, to actually follow up with them. And also, if you have a good experience with a renter, ask for referrals, just say, hey, who else, who do you want to live in? Who do you want to get into this town with you? And sometimes they'll give you people or circumstances. So lastly, what I also do when and you guys probably all do this too, when you have your buyers, but I have a little trigger. A lot of the renters are moving. It's a temporary situation. They don't necessarily always know the area. They're moving from outside the town. I give them a whole bunch of information on the town, events that are going to be happening, depending on what they like. Do they have kids? Do they have, interests? Are they, bikers? Do they like to go into the city? And I would just, every so often just send them something. Hey, thought you might be interested in this happening in your town. And it's those little things where it almost always elicits a response back. And, that way you're at the forefront of their brain.
Hey, Kerry, can I jump in with rentals as lead gen? Not really something I've thought about a lot, but we all know that there are a lot of rental leads out there that people drop, right? People who aren't as skilled and savvy as you. And when you say that 3 out of 4 of your last transactions came from renters, it's cheaper than Zillow, right? That to pay for lead gen, you're actually getting paid to do some lead gen. And okay, maybe they're not big checks of some big sales, but if you're turned into that. I'm remembering that I knew some people a few years ago. I met them. I don't know them well, but they lived in a $4.5 million house. And of course, like a lot of things when we're realtors, the stories always turn to real estate, right? And they said to me sort of laughingly, they said, yeah, so-and-so actually sold us our house. And this other so-and-so really should have. But before we bought this house, we lived in a rental for a year and she wasn't interested. But the person that helped them find their rental for the year is the one that helped them buy a $4.5 million house. So it's good lead gen.
No, it really, I definitely find that it really is good lead gen. But it's, it's being disciplined enough to follow up. And, that's one thing that I really had to be better at was, and for me, it works just on my calendar. If I trigger something, ahead of time, then I know these are the things I have to do. These are the people that I need to reach out to, even if it's just something, happy Cinco de Mayo, anything. And they really appreciate that, because what they don't realize is that just because you're their rental agent doesn't mean you can't be, their other agent. In fact, the one that I put in an offer yesterday on this couple, and they said, hi, thanks for, we had dropped off a little Cinco de Mayo like thing to some people. And they said, we really love that. But we're looking for a buyer's agent. I know like you do rentals, but what about buyers, And I said, absolutely. And, it's keeping, like you always say, you need to just always be in the forefront, but not always necessarily just about real estate, but, everything. Be the local expert, show them stuff in the town that's going on. And then they think of you for that.
And then you've said a couple of times you put a trigger in your calendar. Can you talk to us? What's the actual methodology? What are you doing? Are you literally just typing it in your Google Calendar, or how do you do that?
So I'm a Google Calendar person. But I also, like I said, I have spreadsheets. So I have my spreadsheet of like my renters, and if you don't do rentals, you do the same with buyers. And just every, 4 months, every quarter, you're just making a note to check in with them. But what I do, like at the first of every month, is I look back at my last year's rentals. But it's only 9 months back, because, you want to make sure you catch them before. And Shannon, actually, you told me this advice too, is to also reach out to the landlord that is where they lived. And maybe you can jump ahead of the listing agent. Maybe they didn't have a relationship, and just say, hey, I know so-and-so, their lease is expiring soon. Would you like me to help you find someone new? And
that's awesome.
You never know. They really might need that help.
And chances are their realtor didn't put a reminder in their calendar when that 90 days is coming up. So you've got a way better than 50-50 chance that you beat their realtor.
Right. And then when you come across this, I don't know why this just came to mind, but I also come across a lot of people that are looking for those short-term rentals. So they're in the middle. And those are really, really hard to find on an MLS situation. So what I did is I went out to like the local apartment complexes, or some of the, a lot of them are being built now. They're, there's Vermella in Union, which is like a luxury. It's actually beautiful. There's a lot in Cranford. Westfield has one on Central Ave. And, I just kind of walked in and said, hey, here's my card. If you come across anyone, please let me know. But I'd also like to know, what is your structure for working with, other agents? And some of them have people that, the builders already have those relationships with the agents, and that's fine. But a lot of them also have a referral fee. And right now there's a lot of bonuses. You can get someone into, a short-term rental, and because they're so desperate for that, they're giving $1,500 as a referral fee, which isn't bad when you literally you just go with them for the appointment, and then they work it all out with the leasing office. Like, there's always ways you can get in there, but because you've, helped these people, once again, they're added to your pipeline now, and they can have friends, and they can, do all that. So, what else? Oh, another thing that has also helped is, when you're talking to these renters, a lot of them are young couples, and they don't even know that perhaps because rates are so low, they might be better off buying. And so, I always ask them, why are you renting? Like, what is it, just because it's a short-term situation, or do you think that you have to rent? And oftentimes they'll say, oh, we don't have enough money yet. So you can introduce them to someone from Guaranteed Rate and let them have a conversation. And sometimes they say, oh my gosh, it's just a little bit more, and I'll have a mortgage, and they don't know that. And once again, you're supplying this added value to them, and then they think of you later. So anyway, let me see what I've skipped. I had a nice thing, but What else? Oh, so you know what I also wanted to talk about was what do people need? They'll say, well, what do I need, to rent? So the first thing they need, you want to always let them know. This has happened to me so many times. Just remind them that a part of what they'll need up front, the first month's rent, month and a half security, they also will be paying a commission. Because different areas of the state, country, a lot of times landlord pays the commission fee. Around here it doesn't, and there's nothing like New Jersey mandated that states what they do. It just happens to be certain areas tend to do that. And as rentals sit on the market more, landlords are more apt to pay the commission. But a lot of times people don't understand that. And once again, that is saving you time instead of spending a day showing them rentals and then at the end saying, okay, so you'll be paying the commission and security. And then they say, whoa, what? They didn't realize that. But the another thing so the end, I'm sure you guys all know there's the NTN, but then there's also, and the NTN measures basically their rentability based on a 0 to 100 scale, but it also does a background check, and everyone in on the lease needs to fill out the NTN application. So oftentimes you'll have a very qualified renter, but then the other person that they're living with brings their score way down. So sometimes you have to actually look at what the agent remarks are in the rentals, because some will just ask for credit score and proof of income. And that way you can talk to them more about it. When it's NTN only, sometimes they're immediately eliminated. And so you kind of have to know more about why is their score low? Like I said before, a cosigner in an NTN has to have so much more. So you think that's actually a favor. It's not. If they don't have the NTN, a lot of landlords are willing to take the cosigner information because they can see their pay stub and their credit score, and it doesn't scare them away. So you just have to be careful with that.
That's interesting. I had a renter and they were requiring NTN, and her NTN was horrible. And the reason was that it was a long story, but she had gone through a bankruptcy because her husband was very ill and they had all these medical bills and all this stuff, and their house went into short sale and foreclosure. But the guy was fine with her story and accepted her anyway. Her NTN was like a 28.
Right.
But he was willing to have that conversation and look further into it and take her pay stubs and her job history and was okay.
Right.
But,
and that's the thing, as you start to do more rentals, you start to know those rental agents also, around this area. There are certain people that strictly do rentals. And now that I've developed that relationship with them, they really trust me. When I get a story on someone, and I've already heard that the reason that they don't have a high score is because, they had a family member that had, extraordinary hospital bills or whatever. But yet they're okay. It's just they're catching up with that. Mm-hmm. You develop those relationships, and then you can say, listen, here's the story. They're like, oh, okay. And that's why it's so good. And also with landlords, that's another thing. I'll come across landlords and they're doing, for rent by owner. And so I'll say, well, why, just out of curiosity, why are you taking this on yourself when technically the tenant is paying the commission? It's no loss for you to let me do the work. Let me screen your people. Let me do marketing for you. Let me handle this. And, oh, okay. I didn't even think of it that way, because they think, everyone automatically wants to get out of any fees they have. And they don't realize often just the way we work around here, there's no cost to them. So it's, educating them.
Kerry?
Yes. Hi, Laura.
Hi. Question regarding credit scores.
Yeah.
How do you get somebody's credit score? Are we allowed to run credit anymore?
No, we don't run it. So I always say to them, listen, I'd like to see what we're dealing with here. Can you just send me a PDF of your score. Just do Credit Karma where it doesn't cost you anything. Because
Okay.
that's the other thing. NTN is $35 for each applicant. So if you have 3 adults, they're paying a lot of money.
Right.
So, and that lasts for 30 days. So the other
Credit
thing you want to
Karma?
make sure, no, the NTN. So it only lasts for 30 days. So you don't want them to actually apply for that until they're really serious about something, because then the time is ticking and they think they have 30 days to use that score, but it expires after that. But
I
Credit
thought it was a
Karma,
year.
and most of them even know that. No, NTN?
Yeah.
No, it's 30 days. Because
Oh, wow.
everything changes so frequently. And also remind them, do not take out, the same thing that, guaranteed rate would tell you, do not take out any extra credit cards, don't do anything drastic to change. But yeah, I would just get their credit score show, because, oftentimes the other thing is you don't want to be too prying, and it is a rental. So it's not like you're working with these buyers where you've sat down with them and you've signed that, buyer's agreement. You're trying to keep it light, but also showing them how much you're interested in helping them.
Right.
So, and people have very different impressions about giving up that information. Like, I don't want to give you that. I don't want to give you my taxes. I don't want, and that's fine. So just say, hey, I just want to see what I'm dealing with, because it helps me to negotiate with the landlords. And 9 out of 10 times when people are hesitant about giving that information, there's a story behind that, and that opens the door for them to tell you why. Oh, I lost a child and I have all these expenses, or whatever.
Right.
So,
Okay, thanks.
sure.
So Kerry, I have a question for you.
Yeah.
I think the commission around, especially when renters are coming from a different area where maybe they were used to not having to pay the commission, what's your best script or objection handlers that you have to sort of either one, throw that out there, right, in education, but then also to answer the question of, well, is that negotiable, or when can I pay that, or is that in every case, or wink, wink, nod, nod?
Yeah. So, first of all, a lot is indicative of where they're coming from. So I had a rental listing that was out West Jersey in Branchburg, and that's actually how I found out about that. I had no idea that it's different, landlord versus tenant, and who pays commission. But when I went out there, I had the buy side and the sell side, and she ended up having to pay both commissions, because out there the landlord pays. So we were renting her place, and then she was renting out in Basking Ridge, and so that difference from Branchburg to Basking Ridge changed who pays. So, but what I basically say, I find out where they're coming from and if that's going to be an issue, and then I just say, I know it's really unfortunate. What we can do, if that is an issue for you financially, oftentimes rentals that have been on the market for a longer time, the landlords are more willing to use that as a concession, because they, for them, every month that they have unoccupied is cutting into their, pocket. So, it's one of those things. I'm really sorry. That's how it is around here. If that is an issue, let's find a way we can work around it. Let's look for, rentals that have been on longer, or do you have really strong credit and proof of income? We can negotiate that way. Are you willing maybe to do 2 years? Oh, and that's another point I wanted to say. So you would automatically think, if you have a renter that's willing to commit to 2 years, that's a great thing. However, because the rights are so favorable towards tenants, landlords aren't, that's not always a great thing for them, because number one, if it's not a tenant that they like, they can't get them out. And number two, they worry about being able to increase the rent. It's like technically 3%, like for a year it should go up. But so it's not always a good thing. And that's where you also have to know, like, the landlord, like, is that something they're willing to do for 2 years or not? But it's also a bargaining piece. If someone doesn't have good credit, or, whatever, you can say, listen, they don't have this, but they're willing to put down this much money. However, you can never put down more than a month and a half security, because it's like illegal in rentals. You have to be careful about how much, even if someone comes to you and says, oh, I want to pay a full year, you have to make sure that you're careful with that. There's some like laws against that you could get into serious trouble for, because they're taking too much of your money up front. Let me see what else I could tell you. Oh, and you know what else? So, you know, I love to post like little pictures on social media, whatever. I've actually, even when I'm in a different rental, you know, take a picture of it. And that's the other thing, like I said, I like about rentals, like you're seeing so many properties, and to build up your own social media, people don't know if you're, you know, selling a house, doing this, doing whatever. I've had so many of my contacts I usually just put it on a story, that have reached out. Oh my gosh, that's so cute. Where is it? And, you know, it opens up the conversation. Oh, why are you looking? No, but my cousin is, or, you know, it's the more you can like put yourself out there, the better you are. But you guys all know that. So any other questions?
I have a question.
Sure.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi, Kerry. My name is Lou.
Hi, Lou.
Hey, how do we go about contracts between the landlord and the tenants when it comes to the rental part?
So are you speaking from the listing side, or are you bringing the tenant?
Bringing in the tenant. Well, and
Okay.
if you could just explain a little bit about the listing as well.
Yeah, sure. So what generally happens is when you as the buyer's agent or tenant side is always this to me was actually unusual, because the listing or the buyer side is actually going to be writing up the lease. So I kind of found that like different, because you'd think that the landlord would have certain specifics that he wanted included, but it's not the case. So you always just kind of start with the standard lease, and then I always just send it to the listing agent and say, okay, this is what we usually do. Please add anything else in addition to that. Is that what your question was? Is that what you meant?
Yes, that's what I meant. So
Yeah.
basically, so we'll add things to the contract according to the landlord. That's basically it.
Right. And there are some landlords that do this, you know, as a career, and they have their own specific lease that they want. But as the listing agent, you would know that that's what they're going to provide. And they have their own, you know, specifics about that.
All right. Is there any protections for the tenants?
For the tenant is pretty well protected. But what do you mean, like in terms of?
Because I know that in some contracts, the landlord, they're pretty much protecting themselves, but in the case of the tenants, is there anything that protects them as well? That I can, in case I come across a person that's a little skeptical about signing a lease contract?
Oh, because they're intimidated by the detail. Yeah. So I have landlords that are attorneys, and they are very specific, and it almost like overly scares the tenant. I see what you mean. Yeah. And that's where you just have to go through and say, listen, this is very, very detailed, legal, you know, detailed information. You know, and sometimes if it makes them feel comfortable, you have to, you know, talk to that landlord once, you know, if they're that close and qualified, and it takes care of their work.
All right, thank you.
Sure.
Hey, Kerry. First of all, I'm totally blown away. 37 rentals, that's absolutely amazing. You must have worked really hard.
Stop it. Who needs sleep?
Yeah. So I thought I'd throw out a trick question for you. So if you have that renter with a dog and with that, 580 credit score, first of all, do you feel like there's any landlords that are easier sells, or any of those units, or any tricks, to get those tougher ones rented?
Yeah, so that's hard. There are certain landlords that I know I can go to with that, and literally that's just been from like experience and knowing people in town. I know some landlords, in Westfield, Scotch Plains, but yeah, it's tough. And when they have the lower credit score, their proof of income becomes so important, and their story as to why that credit score is low. And and that's why the NTN doesn't necessarily give the whole picture. It's just, and part of that, what they do focus on is late payments to the landlord. So when you have these younger kids, like I always try to tell my boys, when you guys are out there, like, you have no idea how important it is to establish credit, number one, and also pay those bills on time, because it just affects your credit. It could just be, yeah, they're a month late, every time, and they're fine. But yeah, so and the pets, it's another thing that I do when I'm looking for places to rent for people. And if it doesn't specifically say no pet in the remarks, I assume pets are okay, even if it says no, because sometimes they just didn't put yes. So, I'll call them up and, say it's a little like teacup dog, or like whatever they are. And oftentimes they'll say, okay, well, let me see, the strength of the applicant, and that works out. But yeah, honestly, the hardest thing is that credit. And I've wasted so much time, and that's where I pawn them off to like a Matt or Brian and say, how can you help these people get their credit back up?
Yeah. By the way, I have one looking in Westfield, like 4,500-ish. If you know of anything, let me know.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Hey, Barb,
Yeah.
another thing that clients of mine did. So I like to get a picture of the dog from the tenant. That way.
Yeah, that does help. Yep.
And it really helps if the dog's super cute. But
And with a baby.
My rental clients that I referred to earlier, in their agreement, they are going to have the house professionally cleaned, and they found this service that does, like dog cleaning, and that's going to be probably $500 to that tenant at the end, but it gave the landlord, a level of comfort that her newly renovated house was going to be.
Can you shoot that to me, who that is? Because actually this client that I mentioned is looking at one that's like 4,500, just came on today in Westfield, and they said no pets, and maybe I could try.
Yeah, I was just trying to pull that up as you were mentioning it, so I'll find that and get that to you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, that's another thing. Like, definitely you want to be proactive about that, because oftentimes they're putting that down because the landlord is just so worried about what it might be, so they'd rather have it not. But if you can provide, like Jean said, a picture of the dog, cuddling with a baby and with stickers on its feet, it really can help. And so never be afraid to negotiate, no matter what it says on there. Sometimes you just catch that landlord at the right time, and they're like, fine, Oh, and I also, I'm kind of a stalker. So I check when some of these renters come in, I see Jean laughing at that. I like to see, about them, who their friends are, because sometimes it paints, and this is also just for even like your buyers or sellers, but it paints such a better picture of who they are, and that what you can talk to them about and what's really going to strike a chord with them. And not that you're manipulating, but you're just getting a better picture of like who you're dealing with on both sides, the landlord and also, your renter.
Awesome. Thanks.
Kerry, kind of a random question. Are you finding when people are renting, standalone single family homes, are most of the time the landlords looking to maintain the property themselves, or most of the time, or is it more often that the new tenants are expected to maintain property while they're there?
Yeah. So it's usually now, and once again, this depends on the price point. So there are, and you can almost always tell as soon as you approach the property. Has it been professionally manicured? They're going to usually take care of it themselves. They've got landscaping, they've got, you know, their snowplow removal, whatever. And if it's their property and they're renting it for the time being, or just maybe they're you know, expatriate, they're overseas for 2 years, and they're going to be coming back, they want it to be professionally taken care of, and they will arrange that to make sure that is the case. If it's an investment property, it's a mix between them having someone take care of it, but also the owners take care of it, or I mean the renters. And one thing that I also like to find out with the renters, and especially this isn't so much apartments, but if it is the single home, do they like working in the yard? Do they like making improvements? Because that also is an advantage when you're talking to the landlord, and you know, I'll call them and say, hey, what if my, or not, I shouldn't say landlord, I'm always usually dealing with the listing agent, but I'll ask them, you know, if my clients wanted to make these improvements, is that okay? And, you know, oftentimes when it's an investment property, they are more than happy to let them do it if it's run by them. And oftentimes they'll even pay for the materials, because they want, you know, it's, how nice is that if you have someone living there that cares about it like it's their own? So.
Kerry?
Yes.
I just wanted to put a plug out there that I do have an apartment on Union Place for rent in Summit, if anyone knows of anyone looking for one.
Oh, nice. How many bedrooms?
It's a 2-bedroom, 2-bath. It's on the multiples. And
Are pets allowed?
A pet is allowed. The photograph will be necessary. And
Okay.
it has a washer and dryer installed. And I heard your comment before that that's interest to people. And also it has its own HVAC.
Okay. And what's the parking situation?
Parking is overnight parking in the lots.
Okay.
And I think all day parking on Sunday.
Nice. Okay.
What's the rental price?
$2,400. And it's a nice size, but again, when I screen these folks that call, personally, I don't think any more than 2 people could live in it.
Mm-hmm.
So.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. That's another thing that you want to ask, you know, just, you know, who will be living there. Because, you know, a lot of times they'll try to say, well, I'm just going to be on this lease. They'll send one person, say, representing their, you know, family. But legally, on an application, every adult needs to be on there.
Absolutely.
So, you know, oftentimes they'll say, well, I'm coming here with, you know, with my 2 kids. And then now suddenly they have a boyfriend moving in. They have, you know, and it's just, you have to make sure that you're clear.
That's the dark side of things.
Yeah, because
that's the dark side.
Because you actually get stuck with that later. So the landlord can come back to you and say, you put someone in here, and they actually have, you know, another adult in there. And once again, that goes back to how hard it is to get a tenant out. So say that, you know, the boyfriend girlfriend break up and he decides that he's not leaving. Now, you know, you've put your landlord in a really, really tough spot.
Absolutely. Yep. Gotta watch it.
Mm-hmm. Any other questions?
I gotta go, but thank you so much. I have a 4 o'clock appointment.
Okay.
Ciao.
Bye.
I have a quick question. So sorry, this is Jenny. Thank you, Kerry. My question is in reference to short-term rentals. I just rented a property last week, but they wanted furniture. So I was lucky enough that I found a place in New Providence, all the way over there, with furniture. But I was having a hard time kind of finding one with furniture. Is there a company that you recommend or something where we can recommend them, where they can rent some furniture? I mean, I've never heard of it, so.
You know, I don't, and it's rare that apartments or rentals do come furnished. I don't actually have that information, but I'd be happy to connect you with someone that could help you with that. Right, Laura?
I think
Laura
she's
just
a
taught me that.
furniture rental company.
No, I'm just saying, you just taught me that expression. When I don't know something, I say, well, that's a great question, but I'd be happy to connect you with someone that could help you.
Right.
I think Court Furniture, there are furniture rental companies, if that's what she's asking.
Yeah.
That, I mean, I think I have a couple of telephone numbers for furniture rental companies I can get.
Oh, okay. I'll reach out to you. Thank you, Laura. And my other question, and I'm sorry because I jumped in late, in reference to the credit report, do you run it or do you take the credit report from the clients?
So the NTN, you give them the link, and then as soon as all parties on the application have completed it, they tell you, and then you have to obtain the report from NTN services. As far as credit report, you just have them give it to you, but you always don't ever rely on just a screenshot of their score. You want to get the full PDF.
Right, okay, because the one rental I did had already the NTN, which was great.
Mm-hmm.
But then last week's, they were going to run the report and everything. So,
okay,
score fine, and they sent it to the listing agent. So I didn't even get to see it. But I just thought, okay, like I wasn't sure where do I go to do that for them to run the report. But like you said, they can run the report themselves and then send that over, but not do a screenshot.
Right, and just make sure in the agent remarks that it says, you know, and you also want to just double check with the listing agent, you know, what are you requiring? Because if you just send the credit report and proof of income, sometimes they do want the NTN and they want to accept anything else.
Right, perfect.
I have the contact information if you want for the furniture rental company. I can just give it to you right now.
Yes, that would be awesome because there's a few New Yorkers that want to come over, but they have no furniture and they're trying to, you know, move in to buy later. So that's why. Okay, I'm ready.
Court, C-O-R-T, furniture rental company, and they're in Hasbrook Heights. 201.
Okay.
288-0153, and they have a website, stores, stores.court, CORT.com.
Okay, great, thank you.
So you should be able to look up on that, and
sure,
they're pretty good.
Here's my video. Hi, me. I haven't really combed my hair today. Sorry.
Oh, please look at this.
That's uncombed. It looks pretty good, Jenny.
That's right. Thank you so much, Kerry. This was awesome.
This was awesome.
Oh, you're
Thank you. And you thought you were going to talk for 20 minutes.
That's right. See, look at that. We're overtime.
Wonderful.
Love it. Thank you so much.
Bye.
All right, you're welcome.
Bye.
Thank you, Kerry. Bye.